You ever notice how loud people get when they finally start winning? They post it, flaunt it, and shout, "Look what I did." But here's the truth no one likes to admit. The louder you get when the money comes, the quicker it disappears. Because when money comes from God, it doesn't need a megaphone. It needs management. And the ones who stay quiet, they're the ones who turn blessings into legacies. See, the real test isn't getting the money. It's who you become after it arrives. If the first thing you want to do is prove people wrong, you're not ready, because God didn't bless you to prove a point. He blessed you to fulfill a purpose. That's where most people fail. They think the money came to make them louder, but in reality, it came to make them wiser. Before I go deeper, if you've ever felt that strange tension between gratitude and silence after a blessing, stay with me. Because what I'm about to say might explain why every time you speak too soon, things suddenly start falling apart. When blessings begin to flow and money finally starts showing up in your life, something very human begins to stir inside you. It's that subtle, almost uncontrollable urge to let the world know that you've made it. You want people to see your progress, your new car, the upgraded lifestyle, the opportunities now landing in your lap. It feels like validation, like finally getting what you've always deserved after the years of waiting, praying, and struggling. But that impulse, if not checked, can quickly transform a divine gift into a dangerous distraction. When the provision comes from God, it is meant to humble you, not inflate you. The ego screams for attention, but wisdom whispers for silence. There's a spiritual reason why some of your blessings arrived quietly and privately. Because they weren't meant for display. They were meant for development. When divine provision shows up, it carries a frequency of peace, not noise. It is sacred energy that aligns with purpose, not pride. And when you begin to treat a holy thing as a personal trophy, you disconnect from the very source that gave it to you. The ego wants to announce, "Look what I did." But divine provision is never about what you did. It's about what God trusted you to handle. The moment you let pride take the wheel, you start turning what was meant to be a testimony into a performance. And the danger with performing for validation is that it drains you faster than success can sustain you. God's blessings often arrive wrapped in humility because they are not meant to prove your worth. They are meant to reveal your stewardship. He doesn't give you abundance so that you can parade it around. He gives it so you can learn to manage it with grace. That's why silence is powerful. Silence becomes the filter that keeps your spirit grounded while your circumstances elevate. The louder the ego gets, the further it drifts from gratitude. But when you can stay quiet, even when life starts expanding, you show that you value the giver more than the gift. Many people sabotage their blessings, not because they mishandled money, but because they couldn't handle attention. When your ego starts craving recognition, your focus shifts from purpose to performance. Suddenly, your decisions are no longer guided by wisdom, but by how they look to others. You begin making financial moves for visibility instead of longevity. You start measuring your value in comparison to others instead of alignment with God's plan. That's why divine provision requires discipline. It demands that you silence the part of you that wants credit and instead activate the part that wants to contribute. The ego is loud, but the spirit is patient. The ego wants applause now. The spirit wants legacy later. When you recognize that what you've received didn't come solely from your hustle, but from divine timing, your response changes. Gratitude replaces arrogance, patience replaces performance, and peace replaces pressure. You realize that not every blessing is meant to be broadcasted, because the moment you expose it to too many eyes, you invite energies that are not aligned with its purpose. Envy, judgment, comparison, they all feed off exposure. But the quiet soul builds in peace, protects in silence, and speaks only when results are undeniable. When money comes from God, it isn't just financial, it's transformational. It's meant to grow you, teach you, and refine you. But that refinement requires humility. You can't learn while you're performing, and you can't protect what you keep exposing. The more you talk, the less you listen. The more you boast, the less you build. That's why divine provision must be guarded with wisdom. Let your ego rest, let your gratitude rise, and let your silence speak. Because when the source is divine, the outcome doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. When success first arrives, it rarely comes with instructions. It feels exciting, liberating, almost intoxicating. After years of waiting, struggling, and praying, the door finally opens and money begins to flow. But this is also the moment when silence becomes your greatest strength. Early success is fragile. It's like a newly planted seed that can easily be damaged if exposed too soon. Silence protects growth because it shields your blessing from energies and influences that can interrupt what God is still forming within you. There's a spiritual rhythm to every blessing, and when you speak or show too much too early, you disrupt that rhythm. Quiet seasons are not punishment, they are protection. And when money begins to come from a divine source, that protection becomes essential. In the beginning, your new level of abundance doesn't just attract good energy, it attracts attention. Some of it is supportive, but much of it is rooted in curiosity, envy, or misunderstanding. When you keep silent about your blessings, you give your growth space to mature before the world gets a chance to label it, misunderstand it, or attack it. Think about how the most powerful transformations in nature happen in silence. Seeds sprout underground, babies form in the womb, and diamonds are created under pressure where no one can see them. Silence allows your blessing to take root away from unnecessary noise. It gives you time to learn, adjust, and align before exposure brings new pressures. When people talk too early about their wins, they often end up defending them before they've even stabilized them. Suddenly, opinions start pouring in. What you should do with your money, who you should invest with, how you should spend it, and who deserves credit for your success. This noise distracts you from listening to the one who blessed you in the first place. God wants your focus, not your fan club. Silence keeps that focus intact. It allows you to hear divine instruction clearly, without interference from the opinions of people who don't understand your purpose. There's also wisdom in protecting your emotional energy. Every time you share prematurely, you open the door for people's projections. Some will silently doubt you, others will envy you, and a few will even try to test your boundaries. Not everyone can handle your growth, especially if they're still waiting for their own. But silence keeps you safe from unnecessary comparison. You're able to celebrate your progress privately and learn from your mistakes without an audience waiting to judge you. Growth becomes smoother when you're not under the microscope of public opinion. Silence doesn't mean secrecy out of fear, it means sacred focus. It's the recognition that what's growing inside you is too precious to be handled carelessly. When money comes from God, it's not just a financial transaction, It's a spiritual trust. He gives it expecting that you'll protect it with the same reverence you prayed for it with. Noise dilutes discernment. The more you talk, the more external voices begin to drown out internal guidance. But in silence, clarity becomes sharp. You can sense where to invest, who to trust, and what to avoid. Wisdom grows best in quiet environments. Silence also gives you space to adapt to your new reality. Every blessing requires a new level of responsibility, and that adjustment takes time. When you stay quiet, you can make mistakes privately and learn privately. You can experiment, test strategies, and discern your next move without the pressure of everyone watching. The foundation of success becomes stronger when it's built away from constant observation. Just like a tree needs roots that grow deep before it can stand tall, your finances, mindset, and discipline need time to strengthen before you start showing results. There's deep peace in knowing you don't have to announce your every move. The people who truly support you will see the results in time, and those who don't will be silenced by your consistency. Silence protects not only your blessing, but also your peace. It lets the energy of your success settle, the lessons integrate, and the wisdom mature. When the time is right, what's meant to be seen will reveal itself naturally. Stronger, steadier, and undeniable. Not every blessing is meant to be broadcasted. Some moments of divine provision are so personal, so sacred, that they're designed to stay between you and God. In a world obsessed with visibility, this concept feels uncomfortable. We live in a time where people document everything: successes, struggles, and even spiritual breakthroughs. But when a blessing truly comes from God, it often carries a quiet instruction. Keep it between us for now. There's a deep reason behind that. Some victories are not meant to be shared immediately because they're not yet stable enough to withstand public opinion. Just as not every dream should be spoken before it's built, not every win should have witnesses before it matures. When you receive something divine, a breakthrough, unexpected provision, or financial favor, it's natural to want to tell someone. The human heart seeks acknowledgement. You want others to celebrate what you've waited for, to recognize that your prayers were answered. But the moment you make it public, you also make it vulnerable. Words have energy, and so do people's thoughts. Some will celebrate you, but others will doubt, question, or quietly resent. Even those who mean well might project their fears or opinions onto your progress. Every time you open your mouth about what God is doing, you open your blessing to mixed frequencies of belief and disbelief. That's why some miracles fade too soon. They were exposed before they were established. Keeping certain victories private doesn't mean you're hiding. It means you're protecting. It means you understand that your relationship with God is personal, not performative. What He gives you in private often carries lessons and preparation that others won't understand. Maybe you're learning how to manage a new level of abundance. Maybe you're building discipline in silence so that when the time comes to shine, your character can handle the light. If you share too early, people will comment on the fruit before they even understand the root. And when you start responding to their reactions, you lose focus on your growth and begin managing their opinions instead of your calling. There's a deep spiritual maturity in staying silent about your blessings. It means you trust God more than you crave recognition. You're saying, I don't need everyone to see what you're doing. I just need you to keep doing it. That's faith at a higher level, believing that unseen progress is still progress. Some of the most powerful seasons of growth happen in private because that's where God builds your resilience without interruption. When you withhold your wins, you give them space to strengthen. You allow the blessing to become a foundation instead of a performance. Think about how Jesus performed many miracles and then told people not to speak of them. It wasn't about hiding power, it was about preserving purpose. The more you expose something divine, the more it becomes diluted by human interpretation. Some things are too sacred to be explained. When you receive a divine provision, it's not for the validation of others, it's for your transformation. You don't need an audience to confirm what God already confirmed in private. There's freedom in knowing that your blessings don't need applause to be real. They don't become more powerful because people see them. They become powerful when you live them, when you use them wisely, and when you let them shape your character in silence. The ones who truly walk with divine abundance understand that privacy is not secrecy. It's strategy. It's the wisdom to nurture what's holy until it's strong enough to stand on its own. So, when money, opportunity, or favor comes your way, resist the impulse to prove that you've made it. Some wins are meant to be silent witnesses to your growth. Let them strengthen you, teach you, and mature you in private. When the time is right, your transformation will speak louder than any announcement ever could. Noise is one of the fastest ways to drain the power out of a divine blessing. When something good happens, when money starts to flow and doors finally open, the temptation to talk about it is overwhelming. You want to tell people who doubted you, share your excitement, or even inspire others. But there's a hidden danger in that urge. The moment you make too much noise about what's happening, you start attracting energies that are not aligned with your purpose. Talking too soon can bring doubt, distraction, and even deception into your life. That's why when God blesses you, silence isn't just recommended, it's necessary. Every time you speak, you release energy. Words are spiritual containers that carry your thoughts into the world. And once they're out there, they start drawing responses. Some of those responses will be pure and encouraging, but many won't be. The more you talk about what you're doing or receiving, the more you invite other people's energies into it. Their opinions, judgments, envy, and even disbelief. It's not always intentional harm, but it still disturbs your focus. What was once a clear connection between you and God now has interference. Instead of listening for the next instruction, you start listening to people's reactions. That's how noise turns into confusion. When divine money enters your life, it's not just cash. It's a test of your spiritual maturity. God gives it to see if you can handle the pressure that comes with provision. The enemy doesn't need to steal your blessing outright. He just needs to make you talk enough that you lose focus. Distraction is his quiet weapon. Every time you explain, defend, or justify your success, you waste energy that could have been used to grow it. You end up feeding the wrong audience instead of feeding your purpose. And once you start craving approval, your actions begin to shift from divine alignment to human validation. Noise also invites doubt. When you share your blessings prematurely, you expose them to people who might not have the faith to believe in what you're carrying. Their disbelief begins to mix with your own uncertainty, and suddenly you start questioning yourself. You begin wondering if you deserve it, if it's real, if it's going to last. That doubt weakens your confidence and subtly disconnects you from gratitude. God didn't give you that blessing to make you anxious about defending it. He gave it so you could manage it with peace. That's why silence is strength. It keeps you centered in gratitude instead of spinning in other people's opinions. Then comes distraction. When you make too much noise about your growth, your focus scatters. You start worrying about perception rather than purpose. Instead of working quietly on what's next, you get caught up in maintaining an image of success. But divine provision isn't meant to be maintained through performance. It's meant to be multiplied through wisdom. The quiet ones build systems, savings, and stability. The loud ones build attention but lose direction. Every minute spent talking about your blessing is a minute not spent protecting, managing, or multiplying it. Deception often follows noise as well. The more you announce, the more false opportunities, manipulative people, and superficial relationships start circling around you. Everyone loves a shining light, but not everyone comes to warm their hands. Some come to steal the flame. When you speak too soon, you expose your plans and resources to people who might use them for selfish gain. The louder you get, the easier it becomes for others to disguise flattery as friendship. But silence makes you harder to read, harder to reach, and harder to manipulate. Staying quiet doesn't mean living in fear. It means living in wisdom. It's knowing that protection often looks like privacy. When you receive something sacred, you guard it until it's strong enough to withstand attention. You don't owe explanations, validations, or announcements to anyone. Real power moves in silence. It doesn't need to prove itself. It just grows, multiplies, and manifests results that can't be denied. And that's the secret the wise understand. When the noise stops, divine clarity begins. Wisdom is the bridge between receiving a blessing and keeping it. When money comes from God, it doesn't arrive for show. It arrives with purpose. And that purpose can only be fulfilled when you manage the gift with wisdom. Many people pray for prosperity, but very few prepare for it. They ask for abundance, but don't develop the mindset to handle it. That's why divine provision requires more than excitement. It requires strategy. The wise understand that blessings are not just to be celebrated. They are to be sustained, multiplied, and directed towards something meaningful. Money in the hands of wisdom becomes influence. Money in the hands of foolishness becomes destruction. Wisdom begins with perspective. When money enters your life, it's easy to see it as a sign of success, but divine wealth isn't just about lifestyle. It's about stewardship. God doesn't release provision so that you can boast or compete. He gives it to see how you'll use it. Will you manage it with humility, or will you let pride make the decisions? The wise don't rush to upgrade everything at once. They pause, assess, and plan. They understand that every new level of blessing comes with a new level of responsibility. That means learning how to budget, invest, and protect what you've received. Foolishness spends to feel rich. Wisdom builds to stay rich. The first thing wisdom does when abundance arrives is bring order. It doesn't chase impulse. It sets boundaries. It tells you that not every opportunity is meant for you. Not every investment is safe. And not every request deserves a yes. God's blessings can attract both good and harmful attention. And without discernment, you might end up draining your resources, trying to please others. Wisdom teaches you how to say no without guilt and how to remain generous without being manipulated. It reminds you that your primary duty is to manage what you've been given, not to impress those who weren't part of your struggle. The wise also understand that humility is part of management. They don't let money dictate their character. They let their character direct their money. When success comes, pride will try to convince you that you're untouchable. But wisdom reminds you that what God gives, He expects you to respect. The purpose of divine provision is to strengthen your ability to serve, not to elevate your ego. Every dollar is a tool, not a trophy. The moment you start seeing money as proof of your worth, instead of proof of God's faithfulness, you begin to drift out of alignment. Wisdom anchors you in gratitude so that you remember the source even as you enjoy the supply. A wise person also knows when to wait. They don't chase quick returns or get lost in emotional decisions. They understand timing. Every blessing has a rhythm, and rushing ahead of divine timing can turn gain into loss. Wisdom tells you to be patient enough to let your wealth grow and to keep learning how to handle it. Foolishness spends like tomorrow is guaranteed. Wisdom invests like tomorrow is uncertain. The difference between those two mindsets determines whether your blessing becomes a testimony or a tragedy. Wisdom also manages relationships. When money comes, people change, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically. The wise person observes quietly and doesn't reveal everything they have or plan to do. They create boundaries, not barriers. They stay generous, but they stay guarded. They understand that every blessing attracts both supporters and users. Wisdom keeps your circle small, your focus sharp, and your intentions pure. At its core, managing divine money with wisdom means aligning every financial decision with purpose. You don't just ask, "Can I afford this?" You ask, "Does this align with my calling?" You make decisions that reflect vision, not emotion. You build, save, and give in ways that honor the one who trusted you with increase. When you operate in wisdom, your blessing doesn't just last. It grows, it multiplies, and it transforms lives beyond your own. When money or success comes into your life, it's not just a gift, it's a test. Character is what determines whether that blessing will last or fade. Many people pray for increase, but few are ready for the discipline that comes with it. God doesn't give to inflate your pride, He gives to measure your maturity. Every new level of provision demands a new level of character. The truth is, blessings will always reveal what was already inside you. Money doesn't change who you are. It amplifies what you've been hiding. That's why character must come before celebration. Without character, success becomes dangerous. It makes you louder, not wiser, confident, but careless. When you've been blessed, it's easy to believe that the blessing itself is proof of your righteousness or intelligence. But divine provision isn't a reward. It's a responsibility. God gives not because you've achieved perfection, but because He wants to see if you'll stay humble in abundance the same way you were humble in lack. The real question is not whether you can get the blessing, but whether you can remain grounded while holding it. Character is what stops you from letting success separate you from your source. It's what keeps your gratitude alive when comfort tries to dull your faith. When you have character, you don't rush to flaunt or prove anything. You understand that the money itself is not the miracle. The transformation it triggers in you is. The person who once prayed in desperation must now pray in gratitude. The same faith that got you the blessing must now protect it. Without character, people misuse blessings. They forget their discipline, lose their humility, and start believing that they no longer need the same principles that built them. That's how many fall. They stop honoring the process that once protected them. But character keeps you rooted. It reminds you where you came from and who sustained you when you had nothing. Character is also about integrity. It's about how you handle money when no one is watching, how you treat people who can't give you anything back, and how you manage opportunities that could compromise your values. God will never promote you beyond your ability to stay honest. If money changes your morals, it will soon expose your weakness. The truly successful are those who can grow without losing themselves. They understand that every financial decision carries a spiritual weight because it reveals what you value most: comfort or character. Sometimes God withholds bigger blessings, not because you're unworthy, but because He knows your character still needs refining. A person without patience, humility, and self-control can't carry wealth without it turning into a burden. That's why certain blessings arrive gradually, to give you time to develop the emotional and spiritual muscles to sustain them. Every delay is a lesson. Every small win is a rehearsal for bigger responsibility. The more your character matures, the more God can trust you with abundance. Character before celebration also means resisting the temptation to use success as a way to impress others. The ego always wants recognition, but character wants alignment. You learn that true power is not in showing off what you have, but in controlling how you use it. Real maturity is being able to enjoy your blessings without needing validation for them. You don't need to prove anything to anyone when you're at peace with yourself and your source. A blessing without character is like a house built on sand. It looks beautiful for a moment, but the first storm exposes the foundation. Character is what keeps you standing when the excitement fades, when pressure increases, and when people's opinions shift. It reminds you that the purpose of money is not to elevate status, but to extend service. When God blesses you, He's watching to see if your heart stays pure when your hands are full. Character ensures that you never forget who gave it, why He gave it, and how you're meant to use it. That's the quiet strength behind every lasting blessing. The strength to stay humble, disciplined, and grateful when life finally gives you what you once only prayed for. When blessings start to flow and money begins to arrive, one of the easiest traps to fall into is the desire to show it off. After long seasons of struggle, finally receiving abundance can stir a need to prove yourself, to show others that you made it. But divine provision is not a stage for performance, it's an altar for gratitude. The right response to a blessing from God is quiet thankfulness, not loud bragging. Gratitude strengthens the connection with the source, while bragging weakens it. Every time you take credit for something that came from grace, you risk cutting off the very flow that brought it to you. Gratitude keeps your spirit aligned and your heart humble enough to manage what you've received. Bragging shifts focus from the giver to the gift. It turns a spiritual moment into a performance. You start to care more about who's watching than who's working behind the scenes. Gratitude, on the other hand, pulls you inward. It centers you, reminding you that you didn't earn this alone. It was mercy, timing, and favor that brought you here. Gratitude is quiet because it's confident. It doesn't need an audience, it only needs awareness. Bragging is loud because it's insecure. It seeks validation to cover the fear that maybe the blessing won't last. But gratitude trusts that if God gave it once, He can sustain it again. That trust keeps you at peace even when circumstances change. Thanking God privately builds a stronger foundation than public boasting ever could. Gratitude creates room for growth. It reminds you that abundance is not an end, but a continuation of God's work in your life. When you thank God, you keep the flow alive because appreciation multiplies what you value. Bragging, however, blocks that flow. It's like taking credit for rain. You didn't create it. You simply received it. When you start believing the blessing is purely your doing, you begin to drift from the humility that attracted it in the first place. Gratitude acts as a shield. It guards your heart from arrogance and your blessing from decay. Gratitude is also protection against envy. When you brag, you invite unnecessary attention, and not all of it is good. Some people may applaud, but others will quietly resent or compete with you. That kind of energy creates pressure. You start making decisions to maintain an image rather than to fulfill a purpose. But when you stay grateful and quiet, you protect your peace. You allow your life to expand without interference. The more you keep gratitude private, the more you remain grounded, calm, and focused on what truly matters. Gratitude makes your spirit rich long before your bank account grows. There's also a spiritual law at work. What you appreciate expands. When you genuinely thank God for what you have, you signal that you're ready for more. Gratitude is faith in action. It says, I trust you enough to celebrate even before the next blessing comes. Bragging does the opposite. It announces completion when God is still writing your story. Gratitude keeps you teachable. Bragging keeps you trapped in your ego. The more grateful you are, the more disciplined you become, because you start to see money as a tool of purpose rather than a symbol of power. Real gratitude doesn't just speak, it acts. You don't just say, thank you. You show it through stewardship. You honor the blessing by using it wisely, helping others, and remaining consistent in your values. Gratitude transforms money from a possession into a mission. You begin to ask how your abundance can serve others, not just satisfy yourself. That's how gratitude multiplies. It circulates goodness, while bragging isolates you in pride. The heart that stays thankful stays connected. Gratitude is like oxygen for blessings. It keeps them alive. When you wake up each day aware of the grace that surrounds you, you no longer need to prove anything to anyone. The peace that comes from gratitude is far more fulfilling than the applause that comes from showing off. Every time you say, thank you, instead of, look at me, you reinforce the truth that your success is divine, your abundance is purposeful, and your source is unchanging. Gratitude keeps you aligned with God's flow, ensuring that what started as a blessing becomes a lifelong testimony.